Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Franchise Hockey Manager 9 playthrough of the Chicago Blackhawks. We are just past the trade deadline and nearing the end of the 2023 to 2024 season. The rebuilding Blackhawks, our one big goal was to avoid last place. You can see we're 24 points out of last place thanks to the hapless Coyotes. So we definitely will achieve that goal. Honestly, we're playing better than I would have expected, given that we have basically been trying to get rid of talent and get assets for the future. We're only 2 points out of the playoffs at this point. I don't expect that we'll end up making the playoffs. In a way, I don't want to make the playoffs because I think that we need to get as much good young talent onto this team as possible. But by the same token, or I guess by a different token, I'm certainly not going to turn down the opportunity to compete for Lord Stanley's Cup if we do end up sneaking in somehow. Big moves that we made most recently were trading away longtime star Jonathan Taves. Difficult decision, but he was looking for $12 to $15 million a year for next season. Older player who just wasn't what he used to be. So we decided it made sense to move on from him. Didn't honestly get much in return. All we got was a sixth round pick back. But we did make a trade for Bo Horvat, who looked like he might be becoming a free agent. Didn't seem like it was likely that he was going to re-sign with Vancouver. And we gave up a decent amount to get him as a potential rental. We had to give up rights to a couple of older but decent players who could definitely play in the NHL, as well as a couple of third-round draft picks. But we got him on board, and then we immediately tried to get him signed. And we do have him signed for the next 5 years at $6.25 million per season. So the good news is that we've got both Patrick Kane and Bo Horvat signed up for the next several years. So hopefully those two can begin to develop some rapport with one another. Certainly not going to be like Kane and Taves have been, since those guys have been together for about 15 years. But although we're still in rebuild mode, Horvat is definitely the first key acquisition we've made, who hopefully will be a big contributor to what we're trying to accomplish with this team over the next several years. Can see he had a brilliant game in his first game with us, 3 assists and a +4. Clearly nowhere to go but down after that, but hopefully Horvat will be a big contributor to what we're trying to do here over the next few years. Heading into the final weeks of the season, as I said, it's a question of whether we'll make the playoffs or not. Tend to kind of still hope that we don't, but we'll see what happens on that front. And then we're going to have a lot of money when we head into the off season to potentially spend. So the hope is that there's some interesting free agents out there, and we do have our first round draft pick as well as a first round draft pick from the Tampa Bay Lightning, who look unlikely to be a playoff team in the Eastern Conference. So we're not going to be likely picking right at the top of the draft, but with 2 number ones potentially that are not from playoff teams, we will have ammo if we want to move up. Don't know that we'll be able to move all the way up to number 1 if that's what our goal is, but if there's somebody we like, hopefully we can go get him. Well, we're midway through March, and the Blackhawks have been playing well. Patrick Kane is banged up, though. We have the opportunity to delay his treatment. He's going to be out for 2 to 3 weeks. As I mentioned, we don't necessarily want to make the playoffs. We're in the playoffs if the season were to end as of today, though, which is kind of crazy. So there is an argument to be made to delay treatment, but I don't want it to potentially turn into something more serious that might impact him for the long term, especially given that we just recently signed him to a 4-year extension. So we're not going to delay his treatment. We're going to put our captain onto the injured list. And we'll see if we can remain in the playoff race without him. So we've made it to the final month of the season. We started out when Kane was gone on a long losing streak, but then did win 3 in a row before losing to St. Louis in the last game of the month. Calendar turns to April. You can see we've got 7 games left. We are still in a battle for the playoffs, believe it or not. Unfortunately, Tampa Bay, who we have their first round pick, is now in on the Eastern Conference side. But you can see only 2 points separates them, the Panthers and the Rangers. So our hope is that over the last 6 games that they're going to play, they give up that wild card spot and end up missing the playoffs. We're on the outside looking in right now, but we do have a game in hand compared to Winnipeg, which is really the only team that we're chasing at this point. Over in the Pacific Conference, there's some teams that aren't all that impressive in terms of San Jose and Calgary, but it's really between us and Winnipeg, and I guess an outside chance for Vegas for the second wild card in the Western Conference. We haven't really been pushing for it. Obviously, not forcing Kane to play through that injury. Presumably, we would have played better if we had forced him to do that. He should be back relatively soon. If I'm being honest, I hope we just miss the playoffs, and I hope that Tampa Bay just misses the playoffs. I'd rather have 2 draft picks in the top half of the draft in the first round this coming summer. And we did get a win against the Devils yesterday, so now that we have played the same number of games, we're 1 game out of the playoffs. Fans are satisfied with what we're doing. Ownership happy with our approach. Not expecting to be a serious contender yet next year. Still involved in the rebuild. And the captain is back, so that's good news. And another big win for the Blackhawks as we head towards the end of the season. You can see we beat Calgary 2-1. Our old friend Taves did score the goal against us, but we still got the W. I've been saying we don't want to make the playoffs. Tampa Bay still up a point on Florida and now up 4 points on the Rangers in the East. We're only a point out with 5 games to go, although given that this was a season when we were kind of dumping veteran players and a season that we were only trying not to finish last and a new job that we're trying to rebuild. And I think long term those draft picks and better draft picks are what we need. If we're this close to the playoffs, obviously we're going to try to get in. You never know what can happen if you can get into the tournament. I mean, clearly we're a big underdog if we do get in, but that's why they play the games. And another game, another W for our Blackhawks. Couple goals from Hardman. 3-2 victory over Vancouver. Looked like Winnipeg's actually they didn't keep winning. They did keep winning, so they're still a game up or a point up on us with 4 games to go. Probably time to start looking at the schedule. Obviously, we've got Seattle tomorrow. They've got 75 points, so they're out of the playoff mix. Then after that, we're home against Minnesota, at Pittsburgh, and then home against the Flyers. So kind of a weird schedule, playing the two Pennsylvania teams from the Eastern Conference the last couple days of the year. But Seattle, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia, looking at the standings, Seattle's out of the playoffs. Philadelphia's out of the playoff race. Pittsburgh's one of the best teams in hockey. And Minnesota's a pretty good team too. So not the easiest schedule in the world. We'll see what we can do. Looks like Tampa Bay continues to have a playoff spot, and it looks like they're actually not even in they're in the 7th spot. They're in the they're in the number 1 wild card spot at this point. So not too long ago, it looked like both the Lightning and the Blackhawks were going to miss the playoffs. Now we very well both could end up in the playoffs. And a tough loss yesterday, 4-1 to the Kraken. Looks like, unfortunately for us, that Winnipeg also got a W. So now we're 3 points back with 3 games to go. So just like that, our chances of making the playoffs are severely diminished. Tampa Bay looks like they continue to just crank along. They're not even in a wild card spot anymore. Obviously, it's very tight over in the Eastern Conference, but Lightning have been playing really well down the stretch. And we lost again to Minnesota, 3-1. Kane did get an assist for us back in the lineup, but looks like Winnipeg won again, so we are officially eliminated, I believe. Let's just take a look at the wild card standings to make sure. Yeah, we're 5 points out with 2 games to go, so there's no way we're going to make that up. Tampa Bay, as I've talked about, is actually not even in the wild card spot anymore, but they still are only 2 points out of missing the playoffs. Although when you look at the fact that they've got a game in hand on the Senators, the Panthers, and the Rangers, who are all chasing them, I'd say it's pretty certain that the Lightning will be in the playoffs this coming season. So that hurts a little bit because they were kind of on the outside of the playoffs looking in all season, which had been surprising, but clearly would have preferred to get a higher draft pick with the number 1 that we have from them. The Blackhawks just falling apart down the stretch here. Lost another game 4-3 to Pittsburgh. So home, 1 game left this year against Philadelphia. Let's see if we can make that one count. Would be nice to go out on a win after a pretty tough month of April here. Got a lot of people banged up right now. Horvat, who's been exceptional since we picked him up. You can see 13 goals and 10 assists in 19 games with a +9. So he has been very good, but he'll be sitting out the final game of the year. So Will Radish and Connor Murphy, all those guys banged up a little bit. So we'll see what happens with the final game of the season against the Flyers. And we do get a W to close out the year. So not going to be in the playoffs. Presumably Tampa Bay did end up making it. I'll check on that right now. But the Blackhawks season is over. And Tampa Bay made the playoffs. Big tie there, though. Looks like they may end up in the... they will end up as a wild card rather than being one of the 3 teams in from the Atlantic, I think, because they've got fewer W's. Actually, I'm not sure exactly what that tiebreaker was. Well, maybe it's goal differential, actually. I would have thought it was the number of wins, but the Sabres and the Sens both had more wins than Tampa Bay. And it looks like Tampa Bay is ahead of the Sabres. So not sure exactly what the tiebreaker was. Doesn't really impact us. We just got to hope that Tampa Bay loses early in the playoffs. So with the season over, we'll check in on the scoring of our top players. Obviously, Horvat was not with us most of the year, but a brilliant year for our new addition with 42 goals, 40 assists, 82 points in 80 games. Was playing even better with us than he was with Vancouver, so he seemed rejuvenated by the opportunity to join our team, and glad to have him on board for the future. Patrick Kane, 27 goals, 35 assists. Solid year for the captain in 70 games, given his age. Mike Hardman, nice year, 47 points in 78 games. He'll be back next year. Same thing with Jason Dickinson, 45 points. He will be back next year. Alex Fermentin, who we picked up off of waivers, had a really nice year with 27 goals, 16 assists. He will be back next year. Seth Jones, the excellent defenseman, we've got him locked up for the long term. Had a pretty nice year also, 42 points, including 13 goals, plus 10 on the season. Dennis Chalowski, another one of our waiver wire acquisitions, is also signed for next year, so it'll be good to have him back on the blue line. And then we start getting into one player that is not signed yet, Philip Kurashev. Got to figure out what we want to do with him. I think he's looking for a decent amount of money for, $2.8 million for 4 years. We have put the auto qualify on. We'll see what happens with him in the off season. We did get Kara signed. Wanted him back. He is a tough grinder. Like to have a player like that around forward who can definitely do some checking for us and some hitting and keep people on their toes out on the ice. So he is locked up for another few years. You can see we're going to be paying $2.5 million a year to him over the next few seasons. Other than that, start getting into some players whose futures with the team are not quite as certain. Going to have a lot of big decisions to make in the offseason. Sundqvist, who we did pick up off of waivers, will likely be gone. No, don't really want to bring him back. McCabe is a guy that we've got to figure out exactly what we want to do with. I like the good old school kind of stay-at-home defenseman, which he definitely is. He definitely had a nice bounce back year too, going from minus 27 a year ago to plus 2 this season. I look at his overall ability though, and it's not that impressive for a guy that we're spending $4 million a year on, but he's a defenseman and he's good at defense, so very well could be back next year with us also. Connor Murphy, another defenseman who's good at playing defense. Also kind of turned things around this year from minus 14 to plus 9. You can see he's very good defensively. He's locked up at $4.4 million a year for the next few seasons. So going to have some decisions to make this off season, but feel like we've got the start of a core of something that could be interesting. And when we look at our cap obligations for next year, we got a lot of salary cap space, so we're going to be able to be pretty active in free agency if there are interesting players out there. Clearly, our number one goal is going to be to find a goalie. Stolars ended up having a really nice season for us, 28, 25, and 6, but at 271 goals against, 909 save percentage. We did re-sign him, so he will be back with us. Big question is whether he's going to be the starter or the backup. Phoenix Copley, picked up in a trade earlier to be our backup. Was pretty good in limited action, 7-4-1 record, 253 goals against. I think in a perfect world, he's the type of guy that we'd love to have down in AHL. He's not looking for a ton of money. There's a chance we could bring him back, particularly if he's willing to do a two-way contract. probably won't, but you never know. So we're going to have some interesting decisions to make. But all in all, it was a pretty successful season, I'd say. A little bit of a bummer that we didn't make the playoffs, but when all was said and done, the goal was not to finish last. We were rebuilding. Our job security is pretty good. Team harmony is really good. Fans are reasonably content with us, particularly considering that we moved on from Mr. Taves already. So we absolutely have some work to do, but I think we made some progress. And a little bit of good news for our draft position next year. The Penguins did take out the Lightning 4-2 in the first round. So although Tampa Bay is going to have a pick in the back half of the first round that we'll get from them, it's going to be in the early part of the back half of the first round, thanks to their loss to the Penguins. And we're going to have an interesting matchup for the Stanley Cup between the Oilers and the New Jersey Devils. Oilers were one of the top teams in hockey with 108 points. Devils, on the other hand, just 89 points. They were the weakest team in the Eastern Conference in terms of their points in the regular season, but obviously they've done a good job in the playoffs thus far. Would have to think that the Oilers are going to be big favorites coming off of a 51-win season, but the Devils have clearly been playing their best hockey of the year recently to get all the way to the finals. And it was an interesting path to championship number 6 for the Oilers. You can see 7-game series in the first 3 rounds, and then they swept through the overmatched Devils in the Stanley Cup Finals. So congratulations to the Edmonton Oilers. Hopefully won't be too many seasons till the Blackhawks are following you up as Stanley Cup champions. And with the season over now, we're going to take one final look at the players on our roster who are potential free agents. Copley, hard to imagine we're going to want to bring him back. Again, if we could get him on a two-way, I would actually consider it. He played pretty well for us, and it would be nice to kind of have a good professional goalie down in the AHL for when we need him. I can't imagine that he is going to be happy with a two-way contract, but the only way that we'll know is if we ask. He wants more money. We're willing to give him more when he's on the NHL roster. Will it go for the two-way? All right, we're going to go ahead and submit the offer, $1.4 million a year for 2 years on a two-way contract. See if we can lock him up to kind of be our backup, the backup to our backup in a perfect world. Other than him, not really sure. Miles Wood, making $3.2 million. Sure, he's looking for even bigger money. Wasn't incredibly productive for us after we picked him up. Really just kind of brought him on because we needed to bring on some salary. Certainly not thinking about giving him a raise. So we're going to move on from Miles Wood. Sundqvist, we had been trying to trade after we picked him up. No need to have him around. The guys who are a little younger, Anderson, Dolan, and Kurashev, are the guys that we really need to kind of think about. Anderson, Dolan, I think we did pick him up off of waivers, right? Yeah, we picked him up off of waivers. He played better for us than he did for the Kings. Don't know that we want to be spending $2.5 million on him, so we did put the auto qualify on him. I don't think he's the type of guy that we need to chase a contract for right now, and I think Kurashev is kind of a similar situation. Say I probably like him a little bit more. Got the auto qualify on. He's looking for close to $3 million at this point. He's unpopular with his teammates. Again, I don't feel like we need to chase after him. I think we've got the guys that we really want to get signed. We'll find out what happens with Copley. Again, he's really just an insurance policy. The expectation is that he'll be down in the AHL or picked up by somebody else when we waive him. So don't mind signing him to a two-way, because don't really have any intent on him being on the big club unless we've got some serious injury issues. And Copley did sign with us, so hopefully we'll have him down in the AHL as an insurance policy for the next couple of years. Getting to the point where we're going to want to think about what to do. You can see we've got a pretty long list of players that we inherited who are unsigned. Some of them are definitely kind of ready to start bringing into our organization. Some of them are pretty old at this point too, quite honestly. So I think we're going to look to see who we potentially want to bring into the fold, so we'll have a little more control over what they're doing on a daily basis in terms of their development, and make some decisions and probably move on from some of these players over the next couple of months also. And as we get ready to find out the award winners and prepare for the new NHL season, free agency preview is out there. Dylan Larkin of the Red Wings, 26-year-old, expected to be one of the top players available. Certainly would be happy to bring a player like that on board. We'll have to see how much he's looking for. Ryan O'Reilly of St. Louis, 32 years old, probably not exactly what we want to look for. Obviously a excellent player. Goalie Aiden Hill of the Golden Knights, he could definitely pique our interest. We definitely need some help in front of the net, and he would certainly do that. In Noel Acciari of St. Louis, 31-year-old, less likely to be interested in him, but certainly Larkin and Hill would be on the short list of players that we'd be looking at. See if there's anyone else who looks particularly interesting. Darren Helm is 36. Kiefer Sherwood looks okay. Already talked about Larkin. Just doing a real rough look in terms of ability and potential. Mackenzie Blackwood from the Devils, I did see that they announced they weren't going to re-sign him. He would be another guy who could be in the mix as a goaltender for us to potentially bring on. There's a few guys out there for us to think about. Fortunately, it's a pretty small list of players on our team that are going to be hitting the market, and none of them are particularly big-time players at this point in their careers, or they were never big-time players. So hopefully we'll be a better-looking team in a couple months than we look right now with all the money that we've got to spend. Not surprisingly, none of our Blackhawks were among the nominees or the big award winners. The big trophy, of course, to Connor McDavid, 111 points in 76 games and also won a Stanley Cup for the Oilers. So a big season for Edmonton. Hopefully we'll have a season like that, as I mentioned, in the not so distant future for the Chicago Blackhawks. And not a real big score for us for this season, but should get a little bit to improve our ability. Yeah, 3 points. We'll work on our negotiation skill. Be nice if we at least got 4 points, but it is what it is. We'll go with discipline and player management. Self-preservation is always important, but feel pretty confident that we'll be able to keep our job for the time being. Did get Jake Wise signed. He's a prospect. Not a great prospect, but does give us another center to hopefully start building around. So we are going to move into the 2023 to 2024 season. See what things look like on the other side. So we've made it to July 1st. Owner's pretty confident in us at this point, so that is some positive news as we begin our first full season with the Blackhawks. So first thing we'll do is take a look at our annual budget. I think we sold out every game last year, so there's certainly an argument to raise our ticket prices. We've also got the ability to just add some seats. Could add 1,100 seats and then no change in prices. See how we do with selling those. Definitely want to do at least normal maintenance. Don't quite have the points to be building a new arena yet, and don't really need one. United Center's in excellent condition, but 1,122 more seats. I think we got the opportunity to do that now, so we'll do that. Probably save a few points with a low wage budget. I definitely want to focus on player development, so we're going to invest there. And we'll do a little bit of marketing spend. Hopefully help us sell out those extra seats. That'll put the capacity up to, looks like, 23,550. I'd have to guess that probably not going to have the opportunity to add too much on top of that to the United Center. So I think that's it for the annual budget. Monthly, we're going to keep scouting. Don't need to focus too much on morale and attendance right now because we're not playing any games. So we'll upgrade our marketing spending to normal marketing spending. I don't think there's any reason to be minimal. So kind of everything normal, except we are going to try to really focus on player development. And we're going to add some regular seats to the United Center. And taking a look at the potential free agents, Dylan Larkin definitely stands out. Pretty dynamic offensive player the last couple of years. Wonder what kind of money he's looking for. $6.7 million in 6 years. We absolutely have money to bring somebody on board. And it certainly looks like he's going to be the best guy out there. I don't think we overthink this. There may be other players that we want to go after, but another pretty high quality offensive player with some great physical skills. Our scouts think he's even a little better than Bo Horvat, who got off to a great start with us. Elite player in the league, tends to stay out of trouble. seems like someone we'd want to bring on board, so I'm not going to, I think I'm just going to meet his demand. I guess we'll try to go a little bit under, just because I always want to save as much money as possible, but give him the 6 years he wants. Does want a no movement clause. Probably have to put that in there for him. He's not looking for any bonuses. Maybe he's not old enough. I'm not sure. I don't really have a great appreciation of all the nuances of the NHL bonus system. Okay, yeah, he doesn't qualify yet. I don't believe so. So ask for his response to that. We'll submit an offer to him. So we're not even going to mess around, get an offer out to Larkin. At least get that discussion going. Who knows what'll end up happening, but clearly seems like he's the best guy out there. And there is Blackwood, who we had talked about, as well as Hill. So we've got a couple of goalies that we can potentially pursue. Going to be an interesting offseason. As I mentioned, we also have a lot of money to spend with salary of just $57 million right now. So we have the capacity to bring on some big contracts, whether they're through free agents or trade. So looking forward to seeing how we're going to tackle this offseason. And we're going to focus on that in a lot of depth, both free agency, the upcoming draft, in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.